Oh, he's leaving back there. Who's that tall senator?
That's my senator. No, one of my senators,
Who?
Chuck Payne.
Payne. Okay. Okay. You're on. 9 o'clock.
Can I just ask a question real quick? Because I'm waiting to see if they get it out of committee, and I think they're supposed to Monday. That's at Casey, Tippins.
Okay, apparently this is a vacation day or something. I don't know what the deal is. Okay, good morning. Good. I hadn't seen, I don't know what, y'all bow with me. Hey. Gracious Heavenly Father, for another beautiful day, we say thank you. Help us get through these next couple of weeks. Let us maintain our civility. And I know it's hardest for me. Let us be considerate of others. Let us do things that please you. I want to thank you for our salvation. Help us to add virtue and knowledge to our faith. We ask these things in the name of my Savior, Jesus. Amen. Mr. Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. And your prayer is working. The Senate has been very considerate in allowing me to go first.
I don't think that's who allowed that.
I come before you to ask for your consideration in allowing us to create a House Study Committee on the risk associated with kratom and for other purposes. We want to determine how it's used, how it's sold, and where it's sold. Kratom is relatively a new drug in the United States. It has been used for many years in Southeast Asia as an anti-diarrheal medicine and painkiller and recreational drug. And it has, as though it may not have been the very cause of death as of yet, it has been found in a lot of the overdose deaths that have been tested, and kratom has been in their system along with other drugs.
Mr. Hill, let me stop you for a second. What bill is it?
I'm sorry. It is 1160. House Resolution 1160.
Okay. It's on the first page, about 5 down, folks. Are there any questions of Mr. Hill? No questions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Ms. Tate.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and esteemed Rules Committee. I am here for the semi-fourth time third time
Fourth.
since the
You've
bill
been
has
here,
been on.
you've been here 4 times?
This will be the 4th time. I
You-
started
you-
before.
You can leave, thank you.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Chair.
Wait a second, we
Yes,
have a
one-
question, I didn't
Yes.
know.
I did have a question. Mr.
Madam
Chairman.
Pro Tem.
Thank you, and thank you, Senator. So my understanding, I'm looking at the bill as it passed the Senate. Currently, we require public schools to have a safety plan, but we do not currently require public schools to conduct drills.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Mr. Henson.
And I thank the committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. On page, second down, I think on page 3, Senate Bill 331, to allow lottery winners of over $250,000 to remain confidential. There's a case, for instance, in Florida, Tampa, where a man won $20 million. He was kidnapped and robbed and then later murdered when people tried to get his $20 million. In 2016, a man in Fitzgerald, Georgia was killed, and the paper reported because of lottery winnings. So I think it's an important bill for public safety, and I ask for you guys to consider it. And
Any
women.
questions? No
Thank you.
questions, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Kennedy.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Thank you. I bring to you Senate Bill 301, which is at the top of page 2. Page 3. Forgive me. Thank you. Top of page 3. This is a piece of legislation. It's the revised Uniform Fiduciary Access to Digital Assets Act, which comes from the Uniform Law Commission as proposed legislation. It's been adopted in about 40 states. The remaining states are considering this same legislation. In essence, it allows us to have a vehicle and ways for our fiduciary assets to be managed either in an incapacity or at the time of death. Right now, the way our fiduciary assets, which are those things that digital items, social media, photographs, things that would be in an account such as your Google or Facebook account, those are all governed by terms of service agreement. That's that thing that you scroll down 8 or 10 pages and you click on yes, I accept. Well, that's what drives what happens in the event that you pass away and determines what happens to those assets. This comes to you really because of a tragedy or the idea for it from a family in Virginia who their son had committed suicide, and they wanted to find out what was going on his Facebook account in the days leading up to this to give them some idea of what had happened. And the Facebook account folks said basically they could not interact, could not give any information out based on that terms of service agreement. So this recognizes that we have moved into the digital age, that we have things beyond tangible assets, and we have these digital assets, and it provides a way for those to be managed, and those are set out in the bill. Happy to go into that if anyone has any questions.
You've been too far already.
Okay.
You need to get on the other bill.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, I don't see it on here, but SB 427 is one I would, if with your permission, would like to briefly tell the committee about. This is DHS legislation that comes as proposed updates to Georgia's statutory child support guidelines. There are changes in 4 ways in which our guidelines would be changed, and these are driven not really by Georgia policy considerations, but we have to be in compliance with federal regulations that if we're not consistent with by July of this year, Georgia stands to lose TANF grants and other federal funding.
Mr. Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to go back briefly to, and I've got a serious question about this digital assets. It's intriguing subject, and this is a serious question. Is this something that people should be addressing in their wills?
It is, and it's also what the bill provides basically a 3-tiered system of priorities. And number 1, it provides that the company that stores the digital assets, which is called the custodian in the bill, can provide an online tool for separate ways to manage this. The second way is if the custodian does not have that planning option, then if you've declined to use that tool, then you may give a legally enforceable directions on the disposition through a will, a trust, a power of attorney, or a written record.
Thank you. I'll get you. I'm very interested in this. I'll get with you offline. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Representative Williamson.
No more questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to the committee.
Mr. Deffenbaugh.
Mr. Chairman, I wasn't prepared for that one. HR 11.
You are a House member, aren't you?
I am.
That means you're in the front of the line.
Okay, thank you. HR 1137 is a resolution to the United States Congress and President to help our soldiers before they're discharged.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Stovall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. I bring before you House Resolution 1471. It's on the first page upon the modified open rule, about the middle, almost towards the bottom. And this would create a House study committee to look at the revitalization of the Atlanta State Farmers Market, which sits in Clayton County, but it is the largest farmers market out of the 9 markets, and it's the largest distribution center for the Southeast. And so we want to look at how can we maximize on what's currently there, and also being able to add in additional information or ways we can be able to educate our urban students about agriculture, and as well as preserving the history of agriculture at that facility.
No questions. Thank
All right,
you.
thank you.
Mr. Wilkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I have 2 bills. The first is under modified open rule on page 2, middle of the page, Senate Bill 370. This would exempt the first $25,000 of a Medicaid estate from being claimed by the state. Currently, if the estate's worth $25,000 or less, it is exempt, but if it's above $25,000, the state can make a claim on the entire estate. The second bill is on page 3, the last bill under structured rule. Currently, when you're in a CUBA covenant, when you reach the age of 65, if you break the covenant, your penalty is reduced. This bill would extend the reduced penalty to members of an LLC or a partnership.
Ms. Cooper.
Thank you. Senator Wilkinson, on Senate Bill 370, has DCH let you know that basically CMS is not going to give us a waiver for this to go through, and that we have a generous $25,000 cap compared to some other states that only have a $1,000 or $1,500 that they let people, that they don't claim back for services, and that they are concerned that if this bill goes forward, that could jeopardize the $25,000.
They have not given me an official notification, so I've not tried to speculate on what they might do. I'd like to give them the opportunity to pass the bill and see. My motivation in introducing the bill, as I mentioned, I had a constituent who had a friend. The friend's mother's estate was worth $24,000, and she kept all the money. And then the other person's estate was worth $30,000, and they took the entire $30,000. To me, that was an inequity, and so I did this on behalf of a constituent, and I'd like the opportunity to pass the bill and give them the opportunity to look at all the facts and let me present my case to them, and then let them make a decision. Now, you know a lot more about this than I do, but I do understand that in one time that we had a $100,000, the first $100,000 for everyone was exempted. So I'm just a country boy from Decoa, but when we used to have 100,000, 25,000, the people I'm talking about are not people that have a lot of money or a big estate. I'm just trying to look out for my constituents with limited means that have worked all their life, and it just seems unfair to take an entire person's $30,000 when if it was valued at $25,000, they could keep all of it.
Well, Senator, I applaud what you're doing, and I understand about the inequity. It passed out of my committee, and then later that we heard that CMS wasn't going to do it. And what I'm afraid of is that we had to lower it, and we're so generous with it that they could come back and tell us that we have to lower it further, and then that would hurt our constituents. And they tell me that on case-by-case basis, we can look at these issues when they're closed. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, for clarification, about 7 or 8 years ago, there was no cap, there was nothing. And did we not, as a state, install the 25,000 because the federal government insisted upon it, that we had to do this, and then there was a big push for the Miller's Trust and other ways to protect assets, but what happened? This was under federal mandate that we went to 25,000.
Of course, I'm sure that I was not here 7 or 8 years ago, and I'm sure the Madam Chair obviously knows more about it than I do, but my understanding is you have a state plan that you have to submit, and either it's approved or not approved. And as part of our state plan, it was submitted the way it is, that if the estate's worth $25,000 or less, it's not worth the state pursuing it. But if it goes above $25,000, they take the entire amount. And to me, it would just be more fair to exempt the first $25,000 for everyone.
Mr. Knight.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In regards to Senate Bill 458, if you'll look on everyone's desk, there's we're offering, Chairman Powell and I are offering a committee substitute to Senate Bill 458. If you'll look, there was an error that was made in the preamble, and what this committee substitute does is correct the error in the preamble with 4 words, while incurring a reduced penalty. The original preamble said without penalty or repayment of certain taxes. That is not correct, and we're seeking just to make sure that the preamble is correct.
Okay, what you've got on your desk is LC 372654 ERS. Have a move to hear second. And again, it will be a rules substitute, and all it's doing is correcting a technical error. All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Aye, it is done. Mr. Coomer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To my friend, the chairman of the Agriculture Committee in the Senate, I noticed that you have a bill in your committee, a House Bill 904, that has to do with liability of property owners with regard to when they've charged admission to people to come onto the property. Can you give me an update on that bill and when you think it might move?
It's on our agenda at 2 o'clock this afternoon. It's posted down here.
Great. Thank you very much.
No more questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Huffstetler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not a country boy from Toccoa, but I do sit next to him in the Senate. And he is a great member there. I've got 2 small bills on the back page, page 3, that I've talked about before a couple of times, and that is Senate Bill 355, which was a compromise worked out with the industry and the chamber, and all are in agreement. And then Senate Bill 364 right below it, which will help part-time moms be able to work. There's some technical issues with sponsorship that's not letting them do it. I do also have, I believe still on the yellow sheet, Senate Resolution 195 that I know you said you were looking at. And to update our Finance Committee, we've now passed out 28 bills that come over from House Ways and Means, so I hope I've got 28 friends out here somewhere.
Well, they're all probably under Powell's name, so you still just got one, and he don't count for much. And he didn't show up.
I know.
He does, committee, he does have an excused absence. 'cause he missed this one. Boy's gone. No questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Walker.
Good morning. I'm here to ask for Senate Bill 350, which is under Modified Open Rule, page 2. This is the Paperwork Reduction Act. It aligns state code with changes Congress made to the Graham-Leach-Bliley Act, which requires insurance companies only to send out information practices notices one time unless there are changes to the practice.
No question, and the insurance chairman said that's a good bill.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, committee members. It's an honor to be here with you today. And I'm back to discuss Senate Resolution 774 on page 2 under Modified Open Rule. That is a joint study committee on adoption expenses. It will help us delineate what reasonable expenses are, provide guidelines for both agencies and private attorney adoptions, as well as the procedures for getting them approved. Be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Coomer.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, who's carrying your bill in the House?
Believe it is Barry Fleming, Representative Fleming.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you. No further questions. We'll move down to the bottom of page 2 under Modified Structure Rule. Senate Bill 194 clarifies garnishment procedures. It's a cleanup bill stemming from the Garnishment Reform Act from 3 years ago. We've taken input from practitioners in the field and have sought to improve our garnishment laws. I'd be happy to talk about any of the individual provisions.
Are there any questions of Mr. Stone? No questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Tippins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask for two bills, Senate Bill 362 and Senate Bill 401. They were on the calendar yesterday. They don't appear to be on it today. These are two education bills. They're good bills. Little school children in the state of Georgia need them, and I would appreciate your favorable consideration. Are they
those bills are on page 2 of your blue sheet. 4 down and 7 down.
I'm sorry. I guess I need to get my glasses changed.
It would be.
I appreciate your consideration. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No questions. Thank you. Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I have a real simple resolution. It's SR 149. It's on page 2, third from the bottom, right above Modified Structure Rule. Basically, all this does is identify September 1st of every year as Childhood Cancer Awareness Day. There's a young lady who has been fighting for this about 3 years. She watched her best friend die of childhood cancer awareness, and she just wants to do this so that not-for-profits and people like yourself can use this to raise awareness as well as funds for childhood cancer awareness.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Harvey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. Page 2, Senate Bill 342 deals with the licensing of motor vehicles and the renewal sticker that is on there under the current law 40-2-8. it requires, if that vehicle is pulled over or cited, that the vehicle is impounded. This is not, in my opinion, a due process issue, and what the bill would simply do is change it where the officer would give a ticket and the individual would have until his time before the judge to have whatever problems need to be corrected.
No questions, and Mr. Harbin knows of things which he speaks.
Thank you, sir.
You got another one, or just that one? Okay. Mr. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I have Senate Bill 403, which is not on your blue sheet. This is the election machine bill. Thought I'd extend grace to see everyone in this building, and I think inside and out, has weighed in on this bill, and I'd like to just bring it to your attention when it becomes available.
Wait a second.
Senate Bill, it's SB 403.
All right. No questions, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Rett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, my fellow colleagues, friends, and y'all. I first want to thank y'all for allowing me to come here another day to present my bill. Senate Bill 358 is on the under modified open rule on the second page near the top. That's 358. And basically, what this bill does is it provides for the creation of banking improvement zones. The Department of Community Affairs may designate these zones within the jurisdiction of a local government to encourage the establishment of branches of or representative offices of a bank in areas that are underserved by the banking services. If there are any questions, Mr. Chairman, I'm ready to do my best to try and answer them.
No questions, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Ms. Underman.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. On page 1, under Modified Open Rules, Senate Bill 8, which is fourth from the bottom, I explained yesterday about surprise billing. I've been working with Chairman Smith on this particular issue for several years now. It also has his inclusion about transparency in the bill. On the second page, Senate Bill 444, Georgia Alzheimer's and related dementia. This codifies what is our existing task force that we've been working with, and it creates the State Plan Advisory Council. And then on the third page, third from the top, is Senate Bill 336, the Georgia Bureau Investigation. This is their bill involving subpoenas and the ability to protect victims of children in particular for computer crimes. And it also has an inclusion about fingerprinting that was in the House.
Any questions? No questions, thank you.
Thank you very much, I appreciate it.
Mr. Kirk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I bring to you on page 2, Senate Bill 368. This is Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, where we just added to their functions to assist local law enforcement with grant writing if available. If appropriations are available is what we added to that in the House. I also have 2 more bills on page 3. Senate Bill 367 is the payment of indemnification of death or disability of officer or first responders killed in the line of duty. And again, this is will be for those officers who are unmarried with no dependents. Their family or their estate will receive those funds. And then Senate Bill 369, revenues collected from fines and fees. This is that $5 payment that got missed when we had the criminal justice reform. We went to the accountability courts, and we're just adding that back. That affected POAB by $4 million a year that they were missing in their retirement fund.
No questions, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Smith.
Mr. Chairman, I move that H.R. 1397 on the front page be
recommitted to Agriculture and Consumer Affairs.
You've heard Mr. Smith's request. Is there anybody opposed to that? No? Okay, it's recommitted. Members, anything you've got? Mr. Stevens.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask for Senate Resolution 331, Senator Henson's bill, and also SR 821, Senator Martin, and also 1107.
Wait. Let's go back to the SR.
Okay, SR 821.
Okay.
Senate and SR 331.
Where are those? Where's that last one?
Senator Henson's, let's see, SB.
Oh, the same one we just asked for.
And
Okay.
Spencer's 1107. Shoot them up in the air.
So you what was wrong with the wall a while ago? PK, did you just wake up? You were here a while ago. Y'all just, Mr. Anderson, come on up and say your name and where you're going to go.
You so kind, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, I know it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today I bring you on the second page once again for the second time, Senate Bill 353 and open modified.
I know how many times you've been here.
I'd greatly appreciate your great consideration, sir.
What is the number again, please?
353 is the insurance commissioner bill.
If I put this on, does that mean you quit coming?
You won't be bothered with me for a while.
Oh. Y'all, wait a minute. I thought I was in charge. Does anyone have a question? Raise your hand because I'm lit up here. No questions, thank you.
Have a great weekend, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, I'm going to. I'm leaving you people. Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be very brief. Last one under modified open. SR 821, IT corridors for Savannah and Augusta.
Well,
hopefully providing a framework for the rest of the state down the road.
Mr. Hatchett is going to make the move on that. Somebody's already offered your bill for you this morning since you couldn't get here, but we'll accept that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Benton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to put my name beside Senate Bill 444.
Mr. Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to put my name beside SB 49 on page 2, 349 on page 2.
Mr. Smyrie.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask for House Resolution 940 by Representative Kendrick, and then Senate Bill 358 by Senator Ritt. Thank you.
Ms. Hughley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask for Senate Bill 457 by Senator Tate and your consideration for H.R. 1036 by Representative Kendrick.
Ms. Tankersley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to place my name by Senate Bill 401, Senator Tippin's bill, so that we could have guidance in our high schools and career aptitudes, and that this would create an ability for students to achieve certifications prior to graduation. I'd also like to put my name by Senate Resolution 149, presented by Senator Williams. Unfortunately, we do have a number of children in Georgia with childhood cancer. I have 2 nieces that are part of those kids, and these kids need encouragement, and I would hope that we would put this on and pass this bill. And then I would also like to put my name by Senate Bill 336, Senator Underman's bill.
Ms. Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the first page, I'd like to put my name by the H.R. 1292. That's with the Georgia Alzheimer's and looking at long-term care provisions for us for that, for the state. And I would also like to put my name by the Senator's bill, SB 457, which is the school safety plans. Thank you.
What was the, wait a second. What was the last one, Ms. Cooper?
It was Senate Bill 457. That's Senator Tate's bill on school safety plans.
Mr. Hawkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The center of the second page, SB 370, shielding $25,000 for the citizens of Georgia. I'd like to put my name next to that.
Mr. A. Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to put my name beside Senator Wilkins' bills 458 and 370, also Senate Bill 368 and 353.
Mr. Powell, what was the third one?
368.
Mr. Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to put my name by Senator Strickland's bill, SB 377, the Workforce Development Board, and also Senator Martin's resolution, SR 821.
Okay, this is for Monday's calendar. Under modified open, H.R. 1107. Have a move to hear second. All in favor signify by aye. It's on. Mr. Knight.
I don't know if I'm too late to speak on this, but I appreciate waiting a little bit because I believe that study has just been turned in. While the FAA study has been turned in, there's still public comment that has been made, and there is still approval processes left to go through the process here.
Well, we've already voted for it to be on the calendar, okay. So it's on. Okay. Under modified open, H.R. 1036. Moved and second, all in favor? Any opposed? It's on. Under modified open, HR 1414. All in favor signify by aye. Opposed, same sign. Under modified open, HR 1471. All in favor signify by aye. Any opposed? It's on. Modified open SB 342. All those in favor signify by aye. It's on. Under modified open SB 353. That's Mr. Anderson's, so let's all those in favor signify by aye. John had a good suggestion. We should have done him the first day and forgot about it. Yeah. All those in favor signify by aye. Again? Aye. Opposed? I'm not going to have a vote, Earl. Okay. Under modified open, SB 370. All those in favor signify by aye. Any opposed? It's on. Under modified open, SB 377. All those in favor signify by aye. Opposed, same sign. It's on. Under modified open, SB 444. All those in favor signify by aye. Any opposed? It's on. Under modified open, SR 821. All those in favor signify by aye. Opposed, same sign. It's on. Modified structure, SB 301. All those in favor signify by aye. Any opposed? It's on. Modified structure, SB 331. All those in favor signify by aye. Any opposed? Modified structure, SB 336. All those in favor signify by aye. It's on. Any opposed? It's on. Modified structure, SB 355. Is anyone opposed to that one? Okay, it's on. That's easier. Down at the bottom of the page, under structured, SB 458 as the rules substitute, correcting that technical error. All those in favor signify by aye. Opposed, same sign. We're done. Have a good weekend.